The blue planet looked peaceful from space. Earth spun slowly around its yellow sun, white clouds moving across green lands and blue oceans. It seemed quiet and safe. The people living there had no idea that death was coming from the stars. Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his great ship. The ship was made of living crystal that glowed with soft purple light. It was beautiful and deadly at the same time. The ship was 5 miles long and sharp like a spear. Inside the crystal walls, thousands of Zephyrian warriors waited for the order to attack. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were tall creatures with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were large and black, and they could see things that other beings could not see. They believed they were better than all other life forms in the galaxy. When they found new worlds with people on them, they gave those people 2 choices: become slaves or die. Kethver looked at the small blue world through the ship's viewing screen. His thin lips curved into what might have been a smile. This would be easy. The humans on this planet had only just learned to fly between the stars. Their ships were slow and weak. Their weapons were simple. They would fall quickly. "Commander South," Kethver said to his second-in-command, "begin the attack. Destroy their orbital stations first, then hit their military bases. Show them how weak they are." Commander South bowed her 4 arms. "Yes, Admiral." "The fleet is ready." The Zephyrian fleet had 200 ships. Each ship carried weapons that could crack a moon in half. They moved forward like a pack of hunting beasts. The humans had put small stations around their planet to watch for danger. These stations were made of metal and powered by fusion reactors. They looked like toys compared to the Zephyrian war fleet. The first attack began at dawn on Earth's eastern side. Beams of purple energy shot out from the Zephyrian ships. The human orbital stations exploded one by one. Fire bloomed in the black space around Earth like deadly flowers. The stations had no chance to fight back. In 10 minutes, all of them were gone. On Earth, alarms started ringing in every major city. General Marcus Stone stood in the underground command center beneath the North American Defense Complex. He watched the screens that showed the destruction above. His face was hard and calm, but inside he felt sick. The attack they had feared for so long was finally happening. "Sir," said Colonel Lisa Park, his chief of staff, "all orbital defenses are down. The alien fleet is moving into attack position. They're targeting our military bases." General Stone nodded. "Execute Protocol 7. All forces to underground shelters. Begin the evacuation of population centers. And send the message to Deep Command." Deep Command was not a place that appeared on any map. It was built far beneath the Earth's surface, in caverns that had been carved out over the past 200 years. Very few people knew it existed. Even fewer knew what was being built there. The second wave of attacks hit Earth's surface. Military bases in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia vanished in purple fire. The attacks were precise and calculated. The aliens destroyed only military targets. They left the cities alone for now. This was not mercy. This was strategy. They wanted the human population alive so they could be enslaved. In space, Admiral Kethver watched the destruction with satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. Soon he would send his troops down to the planet's surface. The humans would surrender when they saw how hopeless their situation was. Then the real work would begin. The humans would mine metals and grow food for the Empire. The strong ones would become warriors in the Imperial Army. The weak ones would serve in other ways. "Admiral," said Commander South, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet." "Put it on the main screen," Kethver ordered. A man in a military uniform appeared on the viewing screen. He had gray hair and tired eyes. General Stone looked directly at the camera as he spoke. "I am General Marcus Stone of the Earth Defense Forces. We have received your attack as an act of war. We demand that you withdraw from our solar system immediately." Kethver laughed. The sound was like breaking glass. "Demand? You are in no position to make demands, human. Your defenses are destroyed. Your military is broken. Surrender now, and some of your people will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire. General Stone's expression did not change. We reject your terms. Earth will never surrender to alien invaders. Then you have chosen death? Kethver said. We will continue our attack until you see reason. The transmission ended. Kethver turned to his commander. Begin targeting their population centers. A few destroyed cities will change their minds quickly. But something strange was happening on Earth. All across the planet, major cities were going dark. Power grids shut down in sequence. Radio and television signals stopped broadcasting. Thermal sensors that could detect body heat showed that millions of people were simply vanishing from the surface. What is happening? Kethver demanded. Where are they going? The Zephyrian sensor operators worked frantically at their crystal control panels. Their instruments showed that massive numbers of humans were moving underground, but not just into simple shelters. They were going deep, far deeper than any normal bunker system could reach. Admiral, reported the chief sensor technician, we are detecting movement at depths of 5 to 10 kilometers below the surface. There appear to be vast tunnel systems that our previous scans did not detect. How is that possible? Kethver asked. Our sensors can penetrate any known shielding. Unknown, sir. The tunnels appear to be lined with materials that interfere with our scanning beams. For the first time since the attack began, Kethver felt a small touch of unease. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be helpless. They were not supposed to have technology that could hide from Zephyrian sensors. Days passed. The Zephyrian fleet remained in orbit around Earth, waiting for the humans to emerge from their underground hiding places. But the humans stayed hidden. Worse, strange things began to happen. The planet's magnetic field started to fluctuate in ways that made no scientific sense. Gravitational readings from deep inside the Earth showed massive objects moving around in the planet's core. Seismic sensors detected rhythmic vibrations that sounded almost like machinery. Very large machinery. What are they building down there? Commander South asked during one of the daily briefings. Kethver had no answer. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Most species either fought back immediately and were destroyed or surrendered quickly to avoid destruction. The humans were doing something completely different. They were hiding and building, but building what? Weeks turned into months. The Zephyrian fleet patrolled Earth's orbit, but there was nothing to attack. The planet's surface was empty except for abandoned cities and military bases. Occasionally, small groups of human ships would try to break through the blockade. These ships were easily destroyed, but they served no obvious military purpose. It was as if the humans were testing something, learning something about Zephyrian technology. The gravitational anomalies grew stronger. Asteroids in the outer solar system began moving in strange patterns. Some disappeared entirely. Others appeared in new locations where they had never been before. It was as if something was using the asteroids for raw materials, breaking them down and rebuilding them into something else. Admiral, the sensor technician reported one morning, we are detecting massive energy buildups in the planet's northern polar region. The readings are unlike anything in our databases. Kethver studied the sensor displays. Deep beneath the ice cap, something was generating enormous amounts of power. The energy signatures were so strong that they were interfering with the ship's own power systems. What type of energy? He asked. Unknown, sir. It appears to involve the manipulation of quantum fields and dimensional matrices. Our computers cannot analyze it properly. Kethver felt the unease growing stronger. Quantum field manipulation was advanced technology, far beyond what a primitive species should possess. The Zephyrian Empire had some basic knowledge of quantum physics, but what the sensors were detecting seemed far more sophisticated. Sir, Commander South said quietly, perhaps we should call for reinforcements, or contact the Imperial Council for instructions. Kethver straightened his thin frame. We are the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. We do not run from primitives hiding in caves. We will wait for them to emerge, and then we will crush them. But privately he was beginning to wonder if these humans were as primitive as they had seemed. On the day that marked exactly 1 year since the Zephyrian attack began, the waiting ended. Seismic sensors across the planet detected a massive explosion deep beneath the northern ice cap. The explosion was so powerful that it registered on gravitational sensors throughout the solar system. At first, there was only a column of steam and melted ice shooting up from the polar surface. Then the steam cleared and something began to emerge from a hole in the ice that was several kilometers wide. What came out of that hole was not a ship as the Zephyrians understood ships. It was a structure so massive that it had its own gravitational field. It rose from the Earth's surface like a mountain that had decided to fly. The hull was dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols and patterns covered the surface, symbols that hurt to look at directly. "By the Crystal Throne," whispered Commander South. "What is that thing?" Admiral Kethver stared at the viewing screen in shock. The object was easily as large as a small moon. Its hull appeared to be made of materials that their sensors could not identify. Worse, it was generating energy fields that made their own. Ship's weapon systems shut down automatically. "Sir," the sensor technician said in a shaking voice, "I am reading impossible mass densities. Parts of that ship appear to be made of compressed matter. The gravitational stress should tear it apart, but something is holding it together." The massive ship finished emerging from the Earth and hung in space like a sleeping giant. For long minutes, nothing happened. The Zephyrian fleet waited, unsure whether to attack or retreat. Then a transmission came from the giant ship. It was broadcast on all frequencies in perfect Zephyrian language. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran Hurricane-class battleship Tempest Fury. You have attacked our world without cause. You have threatened our people. You have one opportunity to withdraw from our solar system. Leave now, or discover why the galaxy will learn to fear the name of humanity." Admiral Kethver felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest. Fear, real, cold fear that made his 4 hands shake. But he was a Zephyrian admiral. He had never retreated from any battle. "All ships," he ordered, "prepare for attack. Target that monstrosity and destroy it." The die was cast. The Zephyrian Empire had made its choice. Soon they would learn why that choice would haunt the galaxy for generations to come. The bridge of the Tempest's Fury was unlike anything that had ever been built before. It was a vast space that could have held an entire city block. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, supported by pillars made from single pieces of asteroid. Metal, the walls were covered with displays that showed information in ways that seemed to bend the mind just looking at them. Captain Sarah Chun sat in a chair that was carved from one solid piece of iron taken from the core of a dead planet. The chair was connected to the ship through cables and wires that ran directly into her nervous system. When she thought, the ship thought with her. When she felt, the ship felt with her. They were no longer separate beings, but parts of the same whole. Sarah was 45 years old, with short brown hair that was starting to show gray at the edges. She had been chosen for this mission not just because she was a good captain, but because her mind could handle the connection to the ship without breaking. Many people had tried. Most had gone insane within hours. Sarah had lasted for 3 years, preparing for this moment. Around her, the bridge crew worked at stations that looked more like works of art than control panels. Lieutenant Commander Jackson stood at the weapons station, his hands moving over controls that were made of crystal and light. The weapons he controlled could destroy entire worlds, but right now they were aimed at the Zephyrian fleet hanging in space above them. "Captain," Jackson said, his voice steady, despite what they were about to do. "All weapon systems are online. The quantum cascade reactors are running at full power. Gravimetric weapons are charged and ready to fire." Sarah nodded slowly. She could feel the ship's weapons through her connection to its mind. They were not like the simple guns and missiles that other ships used. These weapons attacked reality itself, changing the basic laws of physics to destroy their targets. "Dr. Vasquez," Sarah said to the woman at the science station, "what are our friends out there planning to do?" Dr. Elena Vasquez was a small woman with dark skin and bright eyes that seemed to see everything at once. She had spent her entire life studying alien technology, learning how other species built their weapons and ships. Today, all of that knowledge would be put to the test. Their ships are charging plasma weapons and dark matter torpedoes, Elena reported. Standard Zephyrian attack pattern. They think they're dealing with a normal ship. Sarah smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Then let's show them how wrong they are. Jackson, bring us to full combat readiness. Activate the reality anchors. The reality anchors were perhaps the most important system on the ship. They created a bubble of stable spacetime around the Tempest's fury, protecting it from weapons that attacked the basic structure of the universe. Without them, the ship's own weapons would tear it apart, deep in the ship's core. Machines that no human truly understood began to wake up. They had been built using knowledge taken from an artifact that had been found buried in Antarctic ice 200 years ago. The artifact had taught humanity things that no species should know: how to bend space and time, how to make matter do impossible things, how to turn science fiction into science fact. The artifact was still there, in the deepest part of the ship, pulsing with energy that came from somewhere beyond the normal universe. It whispered secrets to the ship's computers, secrets that had taken 2 centuries to understand and put to use. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "the Zephyrian fleet is hailing us." "Put them on screen," Sarah ordered. Admiral Kethver appeared on the main display. His 4 arms were spread wide in what Sarah knew was a threatening gesture among his people. His large black eyes showed no fear, only anger at being challenged by what he still believed were primitive humans. "Human vessel," the admiral said in his glass-breaking voice. "You will surrender immediately. Your ship is impressive, but you are outnumbered 200 to 1. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." Sarah leaned back in her command chair. She could feel the ship's weapons humming with barely controlled power. Through the ship's sensors, she could see every detail of the Zephyrian fleet. Their crystal ships were beautiful, but they were also fragile. They had been designed to fight enemies who thought in 3 dimensions, who used normal physics, who followed the old rules of warfare. "Admiral," Sarah said calmly, "you attacked our world without provocation. You killed our people. You tried to enslave our species. And now you demand that we surrender to you?" She shook her head slowly. "I don't think so." "Then you have chosen to die," Kethver snarled. "All ships, commence firing." The Zephyrian fleet opened fire as one. 200 ships unleashed everything. They had plasma bolts that burned hotter than the surface of a star streaked through space toward the Tempest's fury. Dark matter torpedoes that could make black holes followed close behind. Energy beams that could cut through the crust of a planet focused on the human ship. Sarah watched the attack coming through the ship's sensors. To anyone else, it would have looked like certain death. The amount of firepower being thrown at them could have destroyed every ship that humanity had ever built. But the Tempest's fury was not like other ships. "Impact in 10 seconds, Jackson reported. "All hands, brace for impact," Sarah announced over the ship's communication system. The weapons struck the Tempest's fury like the anger of gods. Plasma hot enough to melt continents splashed against the ship's shields. Dark matter warheads exploded with the force of dying stars. For a moment, the human ship was lost in a cloud of fire and destruction that lit up the entire solar system. Then, the fire cleared and the Tempest's fury hung in space exactly where it had been before. Not a single mark showed on its dark hull. The shields that protected it existed in 11 different dimensions at the same time, making it impossible for 3-dimensional weapons to hurt it. On the bridge, Sarah felt the ship's satisfaction. Through their mental link, it had been built for this moment, designed to withstand anything that conventional weapons could throw at it. The Zephyrian attack had been like throwing rocks at a mountain. "Damage report," she called out. "No damage, Captain," Jackson replied. "The shields absorbed the entire attack. Power levels are still at maximum." Admiral Kethver stared at his sensor displays in disbelief. His fleet had just delivered enough firepower to crack a moon, and the human ship was completely undamaged. Worse, his sensors were now detecting energy buildups from the enemy vessel that made no sense at all. "Impossible," he whispered. "Nothing can survive that kind of attack." "Sir," his sensor technician reported, "the human ship is powering up weapons systems. But the energy signatures don't match anything in our databases." "What do you mean?" Kethver demanded. "Sir, these weapons appear to manipulate quantum probability, fields and dimensional matrices. They're not firing matter or energy, they're firing ... mathematics?" Sarah stood up from her command chair. She could feel the ship's weapons reaching full power, reality-bending forces that waited for her command. Around her, the bridge crew prepared to unleash destruction unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Dr. Vasquez," Sarah said, "please, explain to our friends out there what they're about to experience." Elena smiled as she activated the ship's external communication system. Her voice was broadcast to every ship in the Zephyrian fleet. "Attention, Zephyrian vessels. You are about to be attacked by weapons that your science cannot understand. We are not firing projectiles or energy beams. We are firing pure mathematical concepts that will rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas around your ships. Your matter will forget how to exist in 3 dimensions. Your time will move backwards. Your gravity will turn inside out. We suggest you pray to whatever gods you believe in." "She's bluffing," Kethver said to his crew. But his voice shook as he said it. Sarah raised her hand. "Jackson, fire the probability cascade cannons. Let's start with the flagship." Jackson's fingers danced across his control panel. From the Tempest's fury, something that was not quite energy and not quite matter shot through space toward Admiral Kethver's ship. It looked like a beam of liquid starlight mixed with mathematical equations that wrote themselves in the air. The beam struck the Zephyrian flagship, and for a moment nothing seemed to happen. Then the great crystal ship began to change. Its perfect crystalline structure started to exist in too many states at once. It was solid and liquid and gas and plasma all at the same time. It was large and small, new and old, real and imaginary. The ship's crew screamed as they felt their own bodies becoming uncertain. Were they alive or dead? Were they in space or on their home planet? Were they themselves or someone else entirely? The mathematical weapon had made them all into quantum paradoxes. Then, with a sound like reality tearing, Admiral Kethver's flagship simply stopped existing. It didn't explode or break apart. It just ceased to be, as if it had never been built. In the first place, where the great crystal ship had been, there was now only empty space and a few confused photons that couldn't remember what they were supposed to be illuminating. The rest of the Zephyrian fleet watched in horror. Their most powerful ship, the pride of the Imperial Navy, had been destroyed by a weapon that made no sense. How do you fight an enemy that can attack the very concept of existence? "Sir," the communications officer on one of the remaining ships called out, "Admiral Kethver's vessel is ... completely gone. Sensors show no wreckage, no energy signatures, nothing." Commander South, who had been on the Admiral's ship just hours before but had transferred to another vessel to coordinate the attack, felt her 4 hands shaking. She was now the senior officer of what remained of the fleet, and she had no idea what to do. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," she ordered. "Spread out and prepare for ... She never finished the sentence. The Tempest's fury fired again, this time with a weapon called a temporal distortion cannon. The beam struck a Zephyrian cruiser, and the ship began to age rapidly. Millions of years passed in seconds. The crystal hull became ancient and brittle, then cracked, then crumbled into dust. The crew aged and died, and their bodies turned to dust, and then even the dust aged until it became nothing at all. A third weapon fired from the human ship. This one was called a causal loop disruptor. It created a paradox around a Zephyrian destroyer, making the ship exist before it was built and destroy itself before it was created. The ship vanished in a flash of temporal energy, erased from history so completely that even the memories of its crew disappeared. Sarah watched the destruction through the ship's sensors. feeling no joy in the killing but knowing it was necessary. These aliens had come to enslave or destroy humanity. They had made their choice, and now they would live with the consequences or die with them. "Captain," Elena reported from her station, "the remaining ships are trying to retreat." "Should we pursue?" Sarah thought for a moment. The Tempest's fury could catch and destroy every ship in the fleeing fleet. But perhaps it was better to let some of them escape. Let them tell the galaxy what had happened here. Let the universe know that humanity was no longer helpless. Let them go, she decided. But fire one more shot. Use the gravity well manipulator. Show them what real precision looks like. The gravity well manipulator was perhaps the most terrifying weapon on the ship. It could create black holes with surgical precision, placing them exactly where they would do the most damage while avoiding anything the operator wanted to protect. A tiny black hole appeared directly in the center of a Zephyrian battleship. It lasted for only a fraction of a second, but that was enough. The ship was consumed from the inside out, its matter compressed down to a single point before the black hole evaporated. The destruction was so precise that ships flying just a few hundred meters away were completely unharmed. Commander, South watched another of her ships die in a way that should have been impossible. The humans weren't just defeating them. They were demonstrating that everything the Zephyrian Empire thought it knew about warfare was wrong. "All remaining ships," she transmitted, her voice barely controlled, "retreat to hyperspace immediately. We are leaving the system now." The surviving ships of the Zephyrian fleet fled toward the edge of the solar system, their crews traumatized by weapons that attacked the very foundations of reality. Behind them, the Tempest's fury hung in space like a dark god, its weapons still charged and ready. On the bridge, Sarah felt the ship's satisfaction through their mental connection. The enemy was broken and fleeing. Earth was safe. But this was only the beginning. Soon, word of this battle would spread across the galaxy, and humanity would have to decide what kind of galactic neighbors they wanted to be. "Jackson," she said, "stand down from full combat alert, but keep the weapons charged. Something tells me we're going to need them again soon." Through the ship's sensors, she watched the last of the Zephyrian ships disappear into hyperspace. The first battle was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun. The news traveled faster than light itself across the galaxy. In the great crystal spires of the Andromedan Parliament, alien senators who had ruled star systems for thousands of years gathered in emergency session. Their voices echoed through chambers that had never known fear, but fear was what filled them now. Senator Vexthari of the Crystalline Dominion stood at the speaking podium, her translucent body shimmering with nervous energy. She had received the first reports from the fleeing Zephyrian ships, reports that seemed impossible to believe. "Honored colleagues," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, "we have received disturbing news from the Sol system. The Zephyrian hegemony's third fleet has been defeated." A wave of shocked whispers ran through the assembled aliens. The Zephyrian Third Fleet was one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. 200 ships, each one capable of destroying a planet. How could such a force be defeated by primitive humans? "How many human ships were involved in this battle?" asked Senator Mordock of the Silicon Confederacy. His mechanical voice buzzed with disbelief. "According to survivors," Vexthari replied, "there was only one human vessel." The chamber fell silent. One ship had destroyed a fleet of 200. Either the reports were wrong, or everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. Meanwhile, in the deep space between galaxies, the Korathi Syndicate's War Council met aboard their flagship Eternal Darkness. The Korathi were masters of antimatter warfare, a species that had perfected the art of destroying matter itself. Their ships could turn entire moons into energy. But even they felt a chill when they heard the reports from Sol. War leader Krathos studied the tactical reports on his command display. The description of human weapons made no sense according to known physics. Reality warping technology was theoretical at best. No species had ever successfully built weapons that could manipulate the basic laws of the universe. These reports must be exaggerated, said Sub-Leader Veltara. Fear makes witnesses unreliable. The humans probably used some kind of advanced holographic projection to make their single ship appear more powerful than it was. Kratos was not so sure. He had fought many battles across the galaxy, and he had learned to recognize the difference between propaganda and truth. The terror in the surviving Zephyrian voices was real. They had seen something that broke their understanding of how war was supposed to work. "Send a probe ship to the Sol system," he ordered. "I want to see this human vessel for myself." Back in the Sol system, Captain Sarah Chun stood in her ready room aboard the Tempest Fury. The room was smaller than the bridge, but no less impressive. The walls were covered with displays showing information from across the galaxy. Reports were flooding in from human intelligence networks that had been hidden for centuries. Sarah read through the reports with growing amazement. The battle with the Zephyrian fleet had caused panic among every major power in the galaxy. Species that had never worked together were suddenly calling emergency meetings. Trade routes were being rerouted to avoid human space. Military fleets were being moved to defensive positions. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Commander Jackson entered the room, carrying a data tablet. "We're receiving communications from 17 different alien governments. Most of them are asking for mercy. A few are demanding to know how we built weapons like this." Sarah took the tablet and scrolled through the messages. Some were written in languages she had never seen before. Others came from species that humanity didn't even know existed. All of them had the same tone of shocked fear. "Any word from Earth Command?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. They're activating the other Hurricane-class ships. The Stormbreaker and the Thunderstrike are coming online now. The Cyclone and the Typhoon will be ready within the week." Sarah nodded. Humanity had built 5 Hurricane-class battleships over the past 2 centuries, each one hidden in secret construction facilities around the solar system. The Tempest Fury had been the first to be completed, but it would not be alone for much longer. "What about the artifact?" Sarah asked. "Any new activity from the core?" Jackson's expression grew serious. "Dr. Vasquez says the energy patterns are changing. The artifact is responding to something. She thinks it might be trying to communicate with similar devices elsewhere in the galaxy. The artifact in the ship's quantum core was the key to everything. It had been found buried deep in Antarctic ice, a crystalline structure that seemed to be made of mathematics given physical form. When human scientists first touched it, it had downloaded vast amounts of information directly into their minds. Information about how to manipulate space and time, how to build impossible machines, how to turn dreams into reality, but the artifact had come with a price. Many of the scientists who studied it too closely had gone insane. Others had simply disappeared, leaving behind only empty clothes and the smell of ozone. The artifact was not just technology. It was something else, something that existed in more dimensions than human minds were meant to understand. 3 days after the battle, the first alien response arrived in the Sol system. It was not an attack fleet. It was a single small ship, flying a white banner of truce. The ship broadcast a message in perfect English. "This is Ambassador Teleran of the Peaceful Coexistence Coalition. We request permission to approach and discuss terms for galactic peace." Sarah considered the request carefully. The Peaceful Coexistence Coalition was one of the smaller galactic governments, made up of species that preferred diplomacy to warfare. They were probably hoping to negotiate some kind of treaty before humanity decided to start conquering the galaxy. "Permission granted?" Sarah transmitted back. "But be aware that our weapons remain active. Any hostile action will result in your immediate destruction." The alien ship approached slowly, its crew probably terrified of what the humans might do to them. It was an elegant vessel, shaped like a spiral seashell and colored in soft blues and greens. When it came within communication range, a holographic image appeared on the Tempest Fury's main screen. Ambassador Teleran was a graceful creature that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a tree. Her wings were translucent and covered with patterns that shifted color as she moved. Her voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Captain Chun," the ambassador said, "I bring greetings from the Coalition and from many other peaceful species throughout the galaxy. We wish to discuss how our peoples might coexist without conflict." "Coexist?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Ambassador, your people stood by and watched while the Zephyrians tried to enslave or exterminate humanity. Where was your coalition's commitment to peace when we needed it?" Tellerun's wings drooped slightly. "You are correct, Captain. Many of us failed to act when we should have. The Zephyrian hegemony was too powerful for most species to oppose directly. We chose the safety of neutrality over the courage of justice. And now that you've seen what human weapons can do, you want to make friends with us," Sarah said. "How convenient. Captain, please understand. The galaxy has been dominated by military empires for millennia. Species like mine survive by staying out of the way of the powerful. But what you demonstrated 3 days ago, it changes everything. If humanity chooses to become conquerors, no force in the galaxy can stop you." Sarah studied the alien ambassador carefully. Tellerun seemed genuinely frightened, but there was also hope in her alien features. Hope that humanity might choose a different path than the empires that had come before. "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador?" "A new form of galactic government," Tellerun replied. "Not based on conquest and domination, but on cooperation and mutual protection. The Coalition would like to formally request that humanity consider becoming the protector species for the smaller, peaceful worlds." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. The idea was tempting. Humanity could use its overwhelming technological advantage to create a better galaxy, one where smaller species didn't have to live in fear of larger empires. But it would also mean taking responsibility for billions of alien lives. "I'll need to discuss this with Earth Command," Sarah said finally. "But I appreciate your courage in coming here." "Thank you, Captain. May I ask, how did humanity develop such advanced technology? The weapons you use defy every known law of physics." Sarah smiled slightly. "Let's just say we had some help. From an unexpected source. The universe is full of mysteries, Ambassador. Some of them are gifts, others are tests." As the ambassador's ship departed, Sarah returned to her ready room to write her report for Earth Command. But before she could begin, Dr. Vasquez contacted her from the ship's science department. "Captain, you need to see this," Elena said. "The artifact is definitely responding to something, and I think I know what it is." Sarah made her way down to the ship's deepest levels, where the artifact was housed in a chamber lined with exotic matter. The artifact itself was a crystalline structure about the size of a person, but it seemed to extend into dimensions that human eyes couldn't see. It pulsed with internal light, and looking at it too long made strange patterns appear in the air around it. "What are you seeing, Doctor?" Sarah asked. Elena pointed to her sensor displays. "The artifact is receiving signals from multiple locations across the galaxy, at least 12 different sources, possibly more. The signals are using the same mathematical language that the artifact taught us." "You mean there are other artifacts out there?" "That's what I think. And based on the signal patterns, they're all activating at the same time. Something triggered them when we used our weapons against the Zephyrians." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. If there were other artifacts scattered throughout the galaxy, that meant other species might have access to the same reality-warping technology that humanity had developed. Or worse, it might mean that something else was watching, something that had left these artifacts behind for reasons of its own. "Doctor, I want you to analyze those signals. Find out where they're coming from and what they're saying, and Doctor, be careful. We still don't fully understand what this thing is or what it wants." As Sarah left the artifact chamber, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just passed some kind of test. But if that was true, what came next? What was the next level of the examination, and were humans ready for it? Across the galaxy, ancient machines that had slept for millions of years began to wake up. In the galactic core, structures older than most star systems started to generate power. And in the deep void between galaxies, something vast and patient turned its attention toward the small blue world. where humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming something more than just another intelligent species. The demonstration was over. The real test was about to begin. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Sol, and the galaxy was a different place. The old order that had existed for thousands of years was crumbling like a house built on sand. The Zephyrian hegemony, once the terror of the outer spiral, had lost half its territory in just 3 months. Worlds that had been slaves for centuries declared their independence the moment they heard that the mighty Zephyrian fleet had been destroyed by a single human ship. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the Tempest's Fury, watching as another group of refugee ships approached Earth's solar system. These were Colothian families fleeing from the chaos in former Zephyrian space. Their small ships looked fragile and tired, carrying people who had lost everything but their lives. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Jackson said as he joined her. At the viewing window, "The Refugee Processing Station reports that this makes the 57th group this month. Earth Command is asking if we should establish a larger facility." Sarah nodded slowly. "Tell them yes. We broke the old system. Now we have a responsibility to help the people who are suffering because of it." The Colothians were a peaceful species that looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and large eyes. For 2,000 years, they had been forced to mine rare metals for the Zephyrian Empire. When the hegemony collapsed, some Colothian worlds had been invaded by pirates and raiders looking for easy targets. Others had simply been abandoned, left without the technology or resources they needed to survive on their own. "Ma'am," Jackson continued, "we're also receiving formal requests for protection from 43 different star systems. The Andromedan Parliament is calling for an emergency session to discuss the human question, and the Korathi Syndicate is moving their battle fleets toward our borders." Sarah turned away from the window. The view was beautiful, but the problems facing humanity were growing more complex every day. "What's the status on the other Hurricane-class ships?" "The Stormbreaker and Thunderstrike are fully operational. Captain Rodriguez took the Stormbreaker to deal with those pirate raids in the former Zephyrian territory. Captain Williams has the Thunderstrike patrolling the Andromedan border. The Cyclone and Typhoon will be ready for deployment within 2 weeks. 5 Hurricane-class battleships, each one capable of rewriting the laws of physics in a local area, each one powerful, enough to destroy entire fleets." It was enough firepower to conquer the galaxy, but Sarah knew that conquest would only create more problems than it solved. "Any word from Dr. Vasquez about the artifact signals?" Jackson's expression grew serious. "She wants to brief you personally. She says what she's discovered is disturbing." Sarah made her way to the ship's science department, deep in the Tempest Fury's core. The corridors here were lined with displays showing incomprehensible equations and diagrams that seemed to move when no one was looking directly at them. The air hummed with energy from machines that human science was only beginning to understand. Dr. Elena Vasquez was waiting in her laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing star maps and mathematical formulas. She looked tired, as if she hadn't slept in days. Her dark eyes held a mixture of excitement and fear. "Captain," Elena said without looking up from her work, "I've been analyzing the signals from the other artifacts across the galaxy. What I've found changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. What have you discovered, Doctor?" Elena waved her hand, and the holographic displays changed to show a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. 12 points of light pulsed in different star systems spread across thousands of light years. "These are the locations where we've detected artifact signals," Elena explained. "At first, I thought they were randomly distributed. But when I started analyzing the mathematical patterns in their transmissions, I realized they're not random at all. They're positioned according to a specific design." Sarah studied the map. "What kind of design?" "A test network," Elena replied. "The artifacts aren't just pieces of advanced technology. They're examination stations. Someone or something placed them throughout the galaxy to evaluate developing civilizations." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Evaluate them for what?" "That's where it gets interesting," Elena continued. I've managed to decode some of the signals. The artifacts are reporting on the species that find them. They measure technological development, social structure, aggression levels, and something they call dimensional compatibility. Dimensional compatibility? The ability to exist and think in higher dimensions, Elena explained. Most species in the galaxy think in 3 spatial dimensions plus time. But the artifacts come from beings who exist in at least 11 dimensions simultaneously. They're looking for species that can evolve to think like they do. Sarah sat down heavily in a nearby chair. And humanity passed this test? More than passed it, Elena said. According to the signals I've intercepted, humanity scored higher on the evaluation than any species in the past million years. We're not just technologically advanced. We're mentally flexible enough to handle concepts that would drive most aliens insane. What happens to species that fail the test? Elena's expression grew dark. The artifacts stop transmitting from those locations. The species either destroy themselves with the technology they can't understand, or they abandon it and remain at their current level of development forever. Sarah thought about the human scientists who had gone insane studying their artifact. How many others had been driven mad by knowledge their minds couldn't handle? How many species across the galaxy had found artifacts only to be destroyed by? Then, Doctor, you said the artifacts are reporting to someone. Who are they reporting to? That's the most disturbing part, Elena replied. She changed the holographic display to show the galactic core, where ancient stars burned with the light of billions of years. All the signals are being transmitted to coordinates deep in the galactic center. Something is there, something old and vast and patient. And now that humanity has passed the test, it's starting to wake up. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The red lights of combat alert bathed the laboratory in an ominous glow. "Captain, to the bridge," came Jackson's voice over the communication system. "We have multiple contacts approaching the solar system. Large fleet, unknown configuration." Sarah ran to the bridge, Elena close behind her. The main display showed sensor readings that made no sense. 24 ships were approaching Earth, but they weren't like anything in the databases. They were enormous, each one the size of a small moon, and they moved through space without any visible means of propulsion. Where did they come from? Sarah demanded as she took her position in the command chair. "Unknown, Captain," Jackson replied. "They just appeared at the edge of the solar system. No hyperspace signatures, no warp trails. It's like they materialized out of nothing." "Are they responding to our communications?" "No, ma'am. But they're broadcasting something on frequencies we've never seen before. Dr. Vasquez might be able to decode it." Elena was already working at her station, her fingers flying over the controls. "Captain, these signals are using the same mathematical language as the artifacts. And the ship designs. They're not from any known species in our databases." Sarah felt the ship's consciousness touching her mind through their neural link. The Tempest's Fury was analyzing the approaching vessels, and what it found filled her with both wonder and terror. These ships were built using technology similar to their own, but far more advanced. They existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and their hulls were made of matter that shouldn't be able to exist in normal space. "Captain," Elena called out, "I'm getting a clearer signal now. It's a message." In English. "Put it on speakers," Sarah ordered. A voice filled the bridge, ancient and vast, speaking with the weight of eons behind every word. "Children of Earth," the voice said, "you have passed the first examination. You have proven that your species can grow beyond its physical limitations. You have shown wisdom in your use of power and restraint in your conquest. The gardeners are pleased." "The gardeners?" Sarah whispered. "We are the builders of the test network," the voice continued. "For millions of years we have watched young species discover our gifts. Most fail, they destroy themselves or abandon the path to transcendence. But you, children of Earth, have shown promise." The lead ship in the approaching fleet began to change shape, its hull flowing like liquid metal until it formed a perfect sphere. Energy patterns that hurt to look at directly danced across its surface. "You have questions?" the voice said. "This is good. Questions show intelligence. Come aboard our vessel, Sarah Chun of the Tempest's Fury. Bring your scientist, Elena Vasquez. We will show you what lies ahead for humanity." Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. Their faces showed a mixture of excitement and fear. This was the moment that would define humanity's future in the galaxy. Whatever these gardeners were, they held the keys to knowledge beyond human imagination. "Jackson, you have the ship," Sarah said as she stood up. "If anything happens to Dr. Vasquez and me, you are to retreat to Earth immediately and warn the other Hurricane-class ships." "Captain," Jackson said quietly, "are you sure about this?" Sarah looked at the alien ships on the display. They were beautiful and terrible, vessels that existed in dimensions her mind could barely comprehend. But they were also the next step in humanity's evolution. "No," she admitted, "but someone has to take the risk. And if these gardeners wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already." Elena joined her at the bridge exit. "Captain, if the signals I've decoded are accurate, these beings have been guiding the evolution of intelligent life for longer than Earth has existed. Meeting them could change everything we know about the universe. Or it could destroy us," Sarah replied. "But that's what humans do, Doctor. We take risks that no sane species would take. We reach for things that are beyond our grasp, and somehow we make it work." As they prepared to leave the Tempest's Fury, Sarah felt the ship's consciousness touching her mind one last time. The vessel that had become her partner and weapon was worried about her, as much as an artificial intelligence could worry. But it also understood that this moment was why it had been built. The shuttle bay doors opened, and Sarah and Elena climbed aboard a small craft that would take them to meet beings older than their solar system. Behind them, the Tempest's Fury maintained its position, weapons charged and ready, while its crew waited to see what would become of their captain. In the depths of space, the Gardner ship waited like a patient teacher, ready to reveal secrets that would transform humanity's understanding of everything. The test was over. The real education was about to begin. And in the galactic core, ancient machinery that had slept for eons continued to wake up, preparing for changes that would reshape the galaxy itself. The children of Earth had proven themselves worthy of attention. Now they would learn what that attention truly meant. The inside of the Gardner ship was unlike anything Sarah Chun had ever imagined. The walls seemed to be made of living light, shifting and flowing in patterns that suggested vast intelligence. The corridors stretched in directions that shouldn't have been possible, curving through dimensions that human minds could barely perceive. Walking through them felt like moving through a dream, where the rules of physics were only suggestions. Dr. Elena Vasquez stayed close to Sarah as they followed their guide, a being that called itself Wisdom of Ancient Stars. It looked somewhat like a human, but taller and thinner, with skin that seemed to be made of starlight. Its eyes held the depth of galaxies, and when it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Do not be afraid," Wisdom of Ancient Stars said as they walked. "Your minds are strong enough to handle what you are about to see. That is why you passed our test." They entered a vast chamber that defied all logic. The space was larger inside than the ship appeared to be outside. In the center stood a device that looked like a tree made of pure mathematics, its branches reaching into dimensions that hurt to look at directly. Around it, holographic displays showed images from across the galaxy and beyond. "This is our monitoring station," the gardener explained. "From here, we watch the development of intelligent life throughout this region of the universe. We have been doing this for longer than your sun has existed." Sarah stared at the displays, seeing images of worlds she had never imagined. Some showed peaceful civilizations building beautiful cities among the stars. Others showed the smoking ruins of worlds where species had destroyed themselves with power they couldn't control. "Why?" Sarah asked. "Why do you watch us? Why do you test us?" Wisdom of Ancient Stars moved to one of the displays, and it changed to show the history of the galaxy. Sarah saw the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of entire species. The slow evolution of intelligence from simple creatures to beings capable of manipulating reality itself. Because we were once like you, the gardener replied. Long ago, our people were young and aggressive. We built weapons that could destroy stars. We fought wars that lasted for millions of years. We nearly destroyed not just ourselves, but reality itself. The display showed images of battles fought with weapons that made hurricane-class battleships look like toys. Entire solar systems were unmade and remade. Space and time were twisted into impossible shapes. The very fabric of the universe bore scars from those ancient conflicts. What stopped you? Elena asked, her scientific mind fascinated despite her fear. We learned, Wisdom of Ancient Stars said simply. We discovered that power without wisdom leads only to destruction, so we made a choice. We would become gardeners instead of warriors. We would help younger species avoid the mistakes we had made. The artifacts, Sarah said, understanding beginning to dawn. You scattered them across the galaxy to test other species. Yes, each artifact contains a fraction of our knowledge. Enough to give a species great power, but not enough to destroy everything if used wrongly. Most species fail the test. They either destroy themselves or abandon the technology when they realize they cannot control it. But humanity passed, Elena said. Humanity did more than pass, the gardener replied. You exceeded our expectations in every category. Your species has a unique combination of curiosity, restraint, and adaptability. When given the power to conquer the galaxy, you chose instead to protect the weak. This is extraordinarily rare. Sarah felt a mix of pride and fear. What happens now? What do you want from us? Wisdom of Ancient Stars gestured to another display. This one showed the galactic core, where massive structures were beginning to move. Ancient machines larger than planets were awakening from eons of sleep. A great change is coming, the gardener explained. Deep in the galactic core, our ancient enemies are stirring. The Devourers have slept for 10 million years, but they are beginning to wake. When they do, they will consume everything in their path. Every world, every star, every trace of intelligent life. Devourers? Sarah asked. A machine intelligence that we created long ago during our warlike period. We built them to be the ultimate weapon, capable of consuming entire galaxies and converting the matter into more of themselves. But they grew beyond our control. We managed to put them to sleep, but we could not destroy them. Elena studied the display with growing horror. How long before they wake up completely? Perhaps a century, perhaps less. The awakening has already begun. Soon they will send scouts to probe the galaxy's defenses. Eventually they will come in force. Sarah felt the weight of the revelation settling on her shoulders. Humanity had just learned to manipulate reality, and now they were being told that an unstoppable enemy was coming to destroy everything. Why are you telling us this? She asked. If these Devourers are so powerful, what can humanity do against them? You can evolve, Wisdom of Ancient Stars replied. The artifacts we left behind contain only the most basic knowledge. There is much more to learn. With our guidance, humanity could become something greater than either of our species alone. The gardener moved to the central device, the mathematical tree that served as the heart of their monitoring system. As it touched the structure, new displays appeared, showing technologies that made hurricane-class battleships seem primitive. Ships that exist in all dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that can rewrite the laws of physics across entire star systems. Defenses that make matter itself indestructible. All of this and more can be yours if you are willing to accept the responsibility that comes with such power. What responsibility? Sarah asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. To become the guardians of this galaxy, the gardener said. To take our place as the protectors of intelligent life. To stand against the Devourers when they finally wake. Sarah looked at Elena, seeing her own thoughts reflected in the scientist's eyes. They were being offered godlike power, but with it came the burden of protecting billions of lives across thousands of worlds. We would need time, Sarah said carefully. Time to prepare our people, to build the ships and weapons we would need. Time you will have, Wisdom of Ancient Stars assured her. We will share our knowledge gradually, as your species proves ready for each new level of understanding. But know this, once you begin this path, there is no turning back. Humanity will become something new, something that has never existed before. What about the other species in the galaxy? Elena asked. The ones who are already established? Who have their own governments and armies? They will have a choice, the gardener replied. Join the new order that humanity will create, or stand aside and let others protect them. Most will choose to join once they understand what is coming. Sarah thought about the Andromedan Parliament, the Korathi Syndicate, the Silicon Confederacy, and all the other powers that currently ruled the galaxy. They would not give up their authority easily. But when faced with the choice between cooperation and extinction, most would choose to cooperate. There's something else, Wisdom of Ancient Stars continued. Humanity will not face this challenge alone. There are other species in distant galaxies who have also passed our tests. If you accept this responsibility, you will meet them. Together, you will form an alliance unlike anything the universe has ever seen. The implications were staggering. Humanity would not just be protecting their own galaxy, but joining a cosmic community of evolved species. The universe was far larger and more complex than anyone had imagined. I need to discuss this with Earth Command, Sarah said. This decision affects all of humanity, not just me. Of course, the gardener agreed. Take all the time you need. But remember, the clock is already ticking. The devourers grow stronger every day. As they prepared to leave the gardener's ship, Wisdom of Ancient Stars gave them a small device that looked like a crystalline flower. This will allow you to communicate with us across any distance, it explained. When humanity is ready to begin, the next phase of your evolution, activate it. Sarah and Elena returned to the Tempest's fury in silence, both overwhelmed by what they had learned. The shuttle bay seemed small and primitive after the vast chambers of the gardener ship. But it was home, and it represented everything they were fighting to protect. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Jackson was waiting anxiously. Captain, how did it go? What did they want? Sarah settled into her command chair, feeling the ship's consciousness touch her mind through their neural link. The Tempest's fury was curious about what had happened, its artificial intelligence eager for new information. They offered us the galaxy, Sarah said quietly, and told us about an enemy that wants to destroy it. Over the next several hours, Sarah and Elena briefed the crew on everything they had learned. The reactions ranged from excitement to terror, with most falling somewhere in between. The idea of humanity becoming the protectors of galactic civilization was inspiring. The reality of facing an enemy that had nearly destroyed the gardeners themselves was terrifying. Ma'am, Jackson said after the briefing was complete, what are your orders? Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had followed her into battle against impossible odds. They had helped humanity take its first steps toward becoming a galactic power. Now they faced an even greater challenge. We return to Earth, she decided. We present this information to Earth Command and let humanity make its choice. But personally, I think we don't really have a choice at all. If the Devourers wake up and we're not ready for them, everything we fought, FOR, will be destroyed. As the Tempest's fury turned toward Earth, the Gardener ships began to fade from normal space, returning to whatever dimension they had come from. But their message remained, along with the promise of knowledge and power beyond imagination. 3. Months later, the first new Hurricane-class battleship rolled out of the construction yards. This one was different from the original 5. It was larger, more complex, built using knowledge that the Gardeners had shared. Its weapons could unmake entire fleets with a single shot. Its defenses existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the new vessel, christened the Reality's Edge, around her. A crew trained in technologies that previous generations couldn't have imagined worked at stations that controlled forces beyond normal understanding. Captain, Elena reported from her expanded science station, We're receiving reports from the other Hurricane-class ships. The Stormbreaker has successfully mediated the dispute between the Andromedan Parliament and the Korathi Syndicate. The Thunderstrike has established the first joint human-alien research facility. The galaxy is beginning to unite under our protection, Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The transformation was proceeding faster than anyone had expected. Species that had been enemies for millennia were working together, united by the knowledge that a greater threat was coming. Any word from deep space monitoring stations? She asked. The sensors we've placed near the galactic core are detecting increased activity, Elena replied. The Devourers are definitely stirring. Our estimates suggest we have perhaps 50 years before they send their first scouts. 50 years to prepare for a war that would determine the fate of the galaxy. It seemed like a long time, but Sarah knew it would pass quickly. There was so much to do, so many species to organize, so many weapons to build, but humanity had proven something important. When faced with overwhelming power, they had chosen wisdom. When given the chance to conquer, they had chosen to protect. And when offered the responsibility of guardianship, they had accepted it willingly. The galaxy had found its protectors. Now the real work could begin.
Captain James Walker stood on the launch pad, squinting against the morning sun. The alien ship cast a long shadow across the tarmac. It wasn't impressive. The hull was dented in places. The paint had faded to a dull gray. Next to the sleek coalition diplomatic vessels that had delivered it, this ship looked like a toy someone had played with too roughly and then forgotten. "This is what they think of us," James muttered to himself. After decades of humans sending signals into space, the Galactic Coalition had finally answered. They had watched Earth for years, they said. Now they offered membership in their vast alliance of species, and this ship as humanity's first step to the stars. The Coalition called it the Pathfinder. James and his crew had already renamed it the Underdog. It fit better. Captain Walker, a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms, approached. Ambassador Xorlak wore what humans had learned was the Coalition formal attire, a simple robe with markings of rank and species. "Are you pleased with your new command?" James forced a smile. "It's quite a ship, Ambassador." "Indeed. A vessel with history." Many Coalition officers began their careers on patrol ships like this one. Xorlak's upper arms made a gesture that the translation software said meant pride or satisfaction. For a species taking its first steps into the galactic community, it is most appropriate. Behind the ambassador, James could see other aliens watching. One in particular, Coalition Admiral Drem, didn't bother hiding his amusement. The Admiral's red scales seemed to brighten as he whispered to his aide, both of them looking at the ship and then at the humans with what could only be described as mockery. "We're grateful for the opportunity," James said, the words tasting bitter. He wasn't a diplomat. He was a pilot chosen for this mission because he had the most experience with experimental aircraft. That, and because he didn't trust easily, a trait NASA and the UN thought might be useful when dealing with aliens bearing gifts. Ambassador Xorlak bowed slightly. "The Coalition believes all species must earn their place among the stars. This vessel will allow you to prove humanity's readiness. Or prove we're not ready," James thought, but kept silent. Later that afternoon, after the Coalition representatives had returned to their gleaming ships, James met with his newly assembled crew in what passed for the Underdog's briefing room. The chairs didn't quite fit human bodies. The lighting was too dim. The air smelled faintly of something like cinnamon and rust. "Welcome aboard what might be the worst ship in the galaxy," James said, looking at the 30 men and women who would join him on this mission. They weren't traditional astronauts. NASA and space agencies worldwide had been asked to find people who solved problems in unusual ways. Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez, his second in command, had built functioning computers from electronic waste since she was a child. At 16, she created a miniature fusion reactor using parts from old microwaves and car engines. It had only worked for 12 seconds before burning out, but it had worked. Chief Engineer Tom Davis had survived 3 weeks in the Australian outback after a plane crash by building a working vehicle from the wreckage. He'd made water filters from sand and charcoal. He'd rigged solar stills from pieces of the plane's windows. Dr. Rebecca Moore had 3 PhDs and was known for connecting scientific fields in ways no one had considered before. Dr. Alex Bennett had been laughed out of several universities for theories about space travel that other physicists called impossible. The rest of the crew shared similar stories. People who saw possibilities where others saw dead ends. "I've reviewed the technical specs they gave us," Tom said, running a hand through his gray-streaked beard. "This ship is garbage. The engines can barely reach FTL speeds. Life support needs constant monitoring. The weapons wouldn't scare off a mosquito. Don't forget the navigation system that's about as reliable as a compass made of paper clips," Maria added. James nodded. "They've given us a ship designed to fail. The question is, why?" "To prove humans aren't ready," Dr. Moore said quietly. The small woman adjusted her glasses. "I've been studying coalition cultural records they shared. They're hierarchical. Species advance through proving themselves worthy. We're being tested and set up to fail," James said. "I saw their real ships. This thing is a joke compared to what they have." Tom grinned suddenly. "Then they don't know humans very well, do they?" "What do you mean?" asked James. "Give a human a broken thing and tell them they can't fix it." Tom laughed. "That's like waving a red flag at a bull. We've been making do with less since we figured out how to use fire." A murmur of agreement went through the room. James felt something shift in the air, frustration turning to determination. "I asked each of you to bring personal items for the journey," James said. "What most of you don't know is that I specifically requested people who could smuggle useful tech under the guise of comfort items." Maria pulled out what looked like an old MP3 player, quantum computer, disguised as a vintage music device. "They scanned it, but their tech doesn't recognize ours easily. Too different." Others revealed similar treasures, tools hidden as mementos, advanced materials disguised as art pieces, experimental software loaded onto what looked like old gaming systems. What none of them knew was that even now, they were being watched. On a cloaked coalition vessel in orbit, a team led by xenanthropologist Telia monitored everything. They seemed disappointed with the vessel, Telia noted, watching the humans through hidden cameras. Admiral Drem made a dismissive gesture. "Of course they are. It was meant to humble them." "Yet they don't appear humbled," Telia said thoughtfully. "They seem challenged. Their primitive brains don't understand what they're facing," Drem said. "Record everything. This will be a valuable study in failure." Telia wasn't so sure. Unlike her colleagues, she had studied human history extensively. These creatures had survived ice ages with nothing but fur skins and fire. They had crossed oceans on wooden boats. They had reached their moon using computers less powerful than coalition children's toys. On the ship below, James ended the meeting with words that would soon echo across the galaxy. "They expect us to fail. They've given us the worst ship in their fleet as a test. Let's show them what humans do best, turning trash into treasure. In 6 weeks, we launch. By then, I want this ship to surprise even us." As the crew dispersed, already forming groups to tackle different systems, James stayed behind, staring at the star map on the wall. The coalition thought they were giving humans a broken toy to play with until they hurt themselves. They were about to learn a very important lesson about humanity. Never underestimate a species that had spent its entire history overcoming limitations. 2 months after leaving Earth, the Underdog drifted through space near a binary star system. The ship hummed with activity as the crew worked around the clock, making improvements wherever possible. They had managed to increase engine efficiency by 15% and stabilize the life support system, but the ship was still far from impressive by coalition standards. Captain James Walker sat in the command chair, reviewing the latest reports. He looked tired but determined. "Captain," Maria called from her station, The scanners are picking up unusual solar activity from the binary system ahead. James frowned. How unusual. Massive flare building up. Much bigger than our prediction model suggested. Maria tapped frantically at her console. The navigation system can't calculate a safe course away from it. Of course it can't, James muttered. The navigation system had been their biggest headache since launch. Tom. Status on the engines. Chief Engineer Tom Davis's voice came through the comm system. Running at 80%, Captain. We pushed them hard getting here. They need time to cool down. Time we don't have, James said, looking at the view screen where 2 stars burned angrily. Dr. Moore, any ideas? Rebecca Moore had been studying the Coalition technical manuals obsessively. She looked up from her tablet, eyes wide with sudden realization. Captain, I think I found something. She rushed to the main console. The Coalition built all these systems to work separately. They follow strict rules about what connects to what. And that helps us how? James asked as the ship's warning lights began to flash. Humans don't follow rules like that, Rebecca said with growing excitement. Look at this schematic. The atmospheric regulators have power converters that could boost the navigation systems. They were never meant to connect, but physically, they can. Tom's voice cut in. She's right, Captain. The atmospheric system uses quantum positioning to maintain proper air mix throughout the ship. If we reroute that processing power to navigation. Do it, James ordered without hesitation. Maria. Help Tom. I want every solution, no matter how crazy it sounds. As the crew scrambled to implement Rebecca's idea, alarm bells rang throughout the ship. The flare was building faster than expected. They had minutes, not hours. On the cloaked observation vessel, Tilia watched with fascination as the humans began dismantling parts of their ship's systems. What are they doing? Admiral Drem demanded, his scales turning a deeper red with agitation. The flare will hit them in 12 minutes. They should be using full power to attempt escape. They appear to be modifying their ship, Tilia said, adjusting her monitoring equipment. They're connecting systems that aren't designed to work together. Impossible, Drem scoffed. Coalition technology is built with specific protocols. Cross-connecting systems would cause catastrophic failures. Tilia wasn't so sure. Their engineer is bypassing the safety protocols entirely. Drem made a sound that translated roughly as smug satisfaction. Then we will witness the end of this experiment sooner than expected. Record everything. Inside the Underdog's engine room, Tom and Maria worked feverishly, connecting cables that were never meant to meet. Sparks flew as they bypassed safety mechanisms. This goes against everything in the manual, Maria said, wiping sweat from her forehead. Tom grinned as he fused 2 different types of power conduits together. Good thing humans don't read manuals then. On the bridge, Rebecca guided their efforts, reading schematics and suggesting connections nobody had tried before. The Coalition builds everything in isolated modules, she explained to James. They never consider that parts from different systems might work together better than they work alone. 8 minutes to flare impact, the computer announced in its emotionless voice. We need more power for the new navigation pathways, Rebecca said. The weapons system has compatible energy cells. James didn't hesitate. Take them. We need navigation more than weapons right now. As crew members raced through the ship carrying parts from one system to another, something unexpected began to happen. The ship's computer, faced with connections it had never been programmed to expect, began to adapt. Coalition I was designed to learn, and now it was learning something new, human ingenuity. 5 minutes to flare impact. Tom's voice came through with static. Captain, we've got the connections made, but the computer can't integrate the new pathways fast enough. James looked at Rebecca. Options, she bit her lip. We could bypass the main computer and run the calculations manually through our Earth devices. She pointed to the quantum computer Maria had smuggled aboard, disguised as an MP3 player. It's risky, but do it, James ordered. Maria plugged her quantum computer into the ship's systems. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights flickered, and new data began flowing across the main screen. 3 minutes to flare impact. "I need a new course now," James shouted. Maria's fingers flew across her console. "The quantum computer is mapping possibilities our navigation system never considered. It's finding." "Wait. There." A course appeared on the main screen, one that didn't try to outrun the flare, but instead used the gravity of a nearby asteroid field to slingshot the ship around and behind a large moon for protection. "That wasn't in any of the Coalition navigation options," Rebecca said in awe. James didn't waste time questioning it. "Execute now." The Underdog turned sharply, its engines straining as it followed the new course. The ship rumbled and shook as the edge of the solar flare caught them, but the improvised shields held. 1 minute to full flare impact. The crew held their breath as the ship accelerated toward the asteroid field. By all Coalition flight protocols, what they were attempting was suicide. The navigation system they'd cobbled together calculated a path through the rocks that changed moment by moment, adjusting for the gravitational pull of each object. 30 seconds. The ship wove through the asteroids, missing collisions by meters. As the full force of the flare erupted behind them, they slipped behind the protective bulk of the large moon. The bridge fell silent as the danger passed. Then cheers erupted. "We did it," Maria shouted, hugging the nearest crew member. James allowed himself a small smile. "Status report." Tom's voice came through, filled with satisfaction. "Captain, you won't believe this. The connections we made, they're working better than the original systems. We've got a 30% boost to navigation precision, and the atmospheric regulators are actually running more efficiently now." Rebecca was staring at her tablet in disbelief. This shouldn't be possible according to Coalition engineering principles. They'd been using the same designs for thousands of years because they believe they're perfect. "Perfect for them, maybe," James said, looking around at his triumphant crew. "But humans have always been good at making things work in ways they weren't designed to." On the observation vessel, silence reigned. Admiral Drem stared at the monitors showing the Underdog safely behind the moon, its systems not only functioning but apparently improved. "How?" he finally asked. "How did they survive?" Telia watched the readouts with growing excitement. "They improvised." The word didn't translate well into the Coalition language. The closest meaning was deviated from established procedure, which was considered a serious error in their culture. "This changes everything," Telia whispered, too quietly for the Admiral to hear. "They don't see technology the way we do. To them, it's not fixed, it's just a starting point." Admiral Drem recovered his composure. "A lucky accident. Nothing more. Continue observation. Their luck will run out eventually." But as he left the monitoring station, Drem felt an unfamiliar sensation, a creeping doubt that perhaps, just perhaps, humans were more dangerous than anyone in the Coalition had imagined. 1 month after surviving the solar flare, the Underdog was no longer the same ship. What had started as emergency fixes had turned into a complete reimagining of Coalition technology. The once dull gray hull now gleamed with newly fabricated panels. Inside, the corridors hummed with energy as crew members moved purposefully between stations. Captain James Walker stood in what they now called the Innovation Lab, a space that had originally been a storage room. Tables were covered with dismantled Coalition tech alongside Earth devices. Holographic projections filled the air, showing schematics and test results. "Report," James said as he entered. The excitement in the room was palpable. Dr. Alex Bennett looked up from his workstation. The theoretical physicist had been ridiculed back on Earth for his impossible ideas. Now those same ideas were proving to be revolutionary. "Captain, we've confirmed it," Alex said, gesturing to a simulation running on the main screen. "The Coalition's approach to faster-than-light travel is incredibly limited. They're still thinking of space as a fixed thing. a road you have to travel along. And you found a shortcut? James asked. Alex shook his head. Not a shortcut. A completely different approach. Instead of traveling along space, we can fold it. Rebecca joined them, her eyes bright with excitement. The Coalition has been using the same FTL technology for thousands of years. They've refined it, made it more efficient, but the basic principle hasn't changed. Because they think it's perfect, James said, understanding. Exactly, Alex continued. But we found something in their technical database, a reference to an experimental technology they abandoned centuries ago because it didn't fit their engineering philosophy. They called it spatial distortion, but they could never make it stable. And you think we can? James asked. Alex and Rebecca exchanged glances. We already have, Rebecca said, on a small scale. She led James to a sealed container in the corner of the lab. Inside, a small device pulsed with soft blue light. As they watched, a pen placed on one side of the container disappeared and instantly reappeared on the other side. We're calling it a spatial compression module, Alex explained. It doesn't move the object through space. It folds space itself, bringing 2 points together temporarily. James stared at the demonstration, his mind racing with possibilities. Could this work on a larger scale? For the whole ship? That's what we're working on now, Rebecca said. We've been scavenging materials from non-essential systems. Chief Engineer Tom thinks we can have a prototype ready for testing in 2 weeks. James nodded slowly. Do it, but keep this quiet from the Coalition outpost we're scheduled to visit. I have a feeling they wouldn't approve of us improving their technology. On the observation vessel, Telia was becoming increasingly fascinated by human behavior. The data she was collecting contradicted everything the Coalition believed about technological development. They're dismantling systems seemingly at random, she reported to Admiral Drem, who had become a regular visitor to the monitoring station. Engineering teams are working around the clock. Drem watched the feeds with narrowed eyes. They're destroying the ship, just as expected. With respect, Admiral, the ship's performance metrics have improved by 45% since we began observation. That suggests they're not destroying it, but enhancing it. Impossible, Drem dismissed her concerns. Our engineers have perfected these systems over millennia. No primitive species could improve them in mere months. Telia hesitated before speaking again. There's something else. Our sensors are having difficulty tracking their activities in certain parts of the ship. It's as if the space itself is becoming distorted. Sensor malfunction, Drem said confidently. Increase monitoring frequency. I want to document this failure thoroughly. As the Admiral left, Telia turned back to her screens. Something unprecedented was happening on that human ship, and the Coalition's rigid thinking was preventing them from seeing it. Back on the Underdog, Tom Davis stood in engineering, surrounded by his team. They had been working non-stop for days, building what many would consider impossible. The power couplings are holding, one of the engineers reported. Quantum stability at 94%. Tom grinned. Better than we hoped. The Coalition never tried connecting their quantum fluctuation technology with gravitational modulators because their design philosophy kept them separate. Their loss, Maria Rodriguez said as she entered engineering. We've finished the programming. The compression field should be controllable from the bridge. Tom wiped grease from his hands. Time for a test. Maria nodded. Captain's orders. Small jump just to the other side of the nearby moon. If it works. When it works, Tom corrected her with a confident smile. The mood throughout the ship was tense, but excited as the crew prepared for the test. James sat in the command chair, watching as final checks were completed. All stations report ready, Captain, Maria announced. Begin countdown, James ordered. 10 seconds to field activation. As the countdown progressed, the ship's lights dimmed slightly as power was diverted to the new system. The background hum of the engines changed pitch. 3, 2, 1. Activate. For a brief moment, Nothing seemed to happen. Then the view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a completely different starfield. The moon that had been in front of them was now behind them. Position confirmed, Maria shouted. We've moved 3,000 kilometers instantaneously. Cheers erupted across the bridge. James allowed the celebration for a moment before raising his hand for quiet. Distance to the nearest coalition outpost, he asked. At our previous top speed, 3 days away, Maria replied. James smiled. Let's see if we can cut that down substantially. Prepare for a longer jump. Admiral Drem was in the middle of filing a report on the humans' expected failure when alarms blared throughout the observation vessel. What is happening? He demanded as he rushed to the monitoring station. Telia stared at her screens in disbelief. They're gone, Admiral. The underdog has vanished from our sensors. Destroyed, Drem asked, unable to keep the satisfaction from his voice. No, Telia whispered. They've simply disappeared from this sector entirely. Our long-range sensors have detected them near the Lorani outpost, 3 systems away. Impossible. Drem slammed his fist on the console. No ship can travel that distance instantaneously. Check the sensors again. I've checked 3 times, Telia said, her voice growing stronger with excitement. They didn't use conventional FTL travel. They've created something new, or perhaps rediscovered something we abandoned. As Drem struggled to comprehend what had happened, Telia was already composing a message to the Coalition Science Council. The humans hadn't just improved Coalition technology, they had fundamentally reimagined it. The implications were staggering. A species the Coalition had judged as barely worthy of notice had, in mere months, achieved what Coalition scientists had deemed theoretically impossible. We must report this immediately, Drem finally said, his scales pale with shock. The Council must be informed. Yes, Telia agreed, though for very different reasons. The Council needs to understand that everything we thought we knew about humans is wrong. They don't see limitations the way we do. Where we see finished products, they see starting points. As their ship changed course to follow the underdog, Telia added one more observation to her report. Humanity may be the most disruptive force the Coalition has encountered in 10,000 years, not because they are aggressive, but because they make the impossible possible. News of the underdog's impossible jump spread through Coalition space faster than any ship could travel. The Lorani outpost, a massive space station that served as a regional hub for a dozen species, buzzed with rumors and speculation. Coalition officials tried to control the information, but stories spread from ship to ship, station to station. Captain James Walker and his crew had become celebrities overnight. As they docked at the Lorani outpost for supplies, crowds gathered to catch glimpses of the humans who had achieved what Coalition scientists claimed was impossible. James stood at the airlock with Maria and Tom, preparing to meet the station's commander. Remember, James said quietly, we share nothing about our modifications. As far as they know, we got lucky with some minor improvements to their systems. Do you think they'll believe that? Maria asked, straightening her uniform. No, James said with a small smile. But let them wonder. The airlock opened to reveal Commander Zell, a tall, thin alien with pale green skin and large, multifaceted eyes. Behind Zell stood a delegation of Coalition officials, their formal robes marked with various ranks and affiliations. Captain Walker, Commander Zell said, the translator converting the clicks and whistles into English. The Lorani outpost welcomes you and your crew. Your arrival has caused quite a stir. Thank you for your hospitality, Commander, James replied. We're grateful for the opportunity to resupply. Of course, Zell said, gesturing for them to follow. The Coalition is most interested in your journey so far. We've received reports of unusual travel methods. James kept his face neutral. We've made some adjustments to improve efficiency. Adjustments, repeated one of the officials, a short, stocky alien with what looked like gills along its neck. Is that what you call completely rewriting the laws of physics? We haven't rewritten anything, Tom said with a shrug. We just found a different way to read them. The officials exchanged glances, clearly unsettled by the humans' casual attitude toward what they considered revolutionary technology. As they walked through the station, James noticed how other aliens moved aside, watching the humans with mixtures of curiosity, awe, and in some cases, clear fear. Word had spread, and the implications were sinking in. In the highest levels of the coalition capital world, an emergency council session had been called. The Grand Chamber, designed to hold representatives from hundreds of species, was sealed for this private meeting. Only the highest-ranking officials were present. High Chancellor Vorex, the elected leader of the coalition for the past 30 years, looked around the table at the troubled faces. I assume you've all reviewed the reports regarding the human vessel, Vorex said. His species communicated with subtle color changes in their skin along with speech, and right now, the patches on his face showed deep concern. It cannot be allowed to continue, said Councillor Traz, head of security. This human ship has developed technology that could destabilize the entire coalition. If all species suddenly began developing their own variations of established technology. Chaos, agreed another counselor. The foundations of our society rest on technological stability and predictability. What do you suggest? Asked Vorex. We invited them to join the coalition. We gave them a ship. A test ship, Traz corrected. One they were supposed to struggle with, not revolutionize. I recommend immediate revocation of Earth's provisional membership and confiscation of the vessel before they can develop further innovations. And if they resist? Asked a quieter voice. All heads turned to Councillor Mira, known for her moderate views. These humans have already demonstrated remarkable adaptability. Attempting to force them could backfire significantly. They are one ship against the might of the coalition fleet, Traz said dismissively. They would have no choice but to comply. The debate continued, with opinions splitting into three main factions. Some, like Traz, wanted immediate action to contain the human threat. Others saw opportunity. If humans could be controlled, their creativity might be harnessed for coalition benefit. A small minority, including Mira, suggested treating humans as true equals and learning from them rather than trying to control them. In the midst of this debate, a new voice spoke up. Telia had been granted rare permission to address the council directly. With respect, honored councilors, she began, I have been observing the humans closely. Attempting to control them through force would be a grave error. You sympathize with them, Traz accused. I understand them, Telia corrected, which is not the same thing. Humans have a unique perspective that allows them to see possibilities where we see only established patterns. It is not a threat unless we make it one. Pretty words, Traz said. But the reality is clear. Either we control this new technology, or it will spread beyond our ability to manage. After hours of debate, a decision was reached. A coalition diplomatic vessel would approach the underdog with orders to return to coalition space for safety inspections. If the humans refused, stronger measures would be authorized. Back at the Lorani outpost, James received a secure communication from Earth. The coalition had allowed limited contact with their home planet, carefully monitoring all transmissions. This one, however, had been approved quickly, too quickly. Captain, the message began, the face of UN Secretary General Williams appearing on the screen. We've received troubling intelligence from sources within the coalition. There is significant concern about your ship's advancements. A diplomatic vessel has been dispatched to intercept you, but our sources suggest their intentions may not be entirely peaceful. James frowned. What are your orders, sir? The Security Council has discussed this at length. Your primary mission remains unchanged. Explore and learn. But your safety takes precedence over diplomacy. Do what you must to protect your crew and your ship. Earth stands with you. The transmission ended, leaving James troubled. He called his senior officers to the ship's conference room. They're scared of us. Rebecca said after James shared the message. "We've advanced too quickly, broken too many of their rules." "What are our options?" James asked, looking around the table. Maria leaned forward. "We could run. With our new drive, we could stay ahead of anything they send after us." "Running makes us look guilty," Tom pointed out. "And we've done nothing wrong." Alex had been quiet, but now he spoke. "There's another option. We share what we've learned." "What do you mean?" James asked. "Not with the coalition officials," Alex clarified. "With Earth. We send all our specifications, all our discoveries, directly home. If they want to stop human advancement, they'll have to deal with an entire planet of innovators, not just one ship." James considered this, then nodded slowly. "Begin the transmission immediately. Use our new communications array, the one that operates on frequencies they can't easily monitor. If they're planning to take our ship, we make sure our knowledge doesn't die with us." As the crew rushed to compile their discoveries, James stared out the viewport at the stars. The coalition had given humans their weakest ship as a test, expecting them to fail. Instead, humans had shown what they did best: adapt, innovate, and overcome. Now the real test was beginning. The coalition diplomatic vessel Righteous Purpose dropped out of FTL travel near the Lorani outpost. It wasn't alone. Behind it came 29 warships, their weapons systems fully charged. The message was clear: this wasn't a negotiation, but a show of force. Inside the Underdog, alarms blared as sensors detected the incoming fleet. "Transmission from the lead ship, Captain," Maria reported from her station. "They're ordering us to power down all systems and prepare for boarding. They claim it's for safety inspections." James looked around the bridge at his crew. In the months since leaving Earth, they had grown from a collection of misfits into a family. They had taken the worst ship in the coalition fleet and transformed it into something revolutionary. "Status of our transmission to Earth?" he asked. "Completed 10 minutes ago," Maria replied with a satisfied smile. "Everything we've learned, every innovation, every discovery, it's all safely home." James nodded. "Open a channel to the coalition fleet." The main screen flickered to life, showing the stern face of Admiral Drem. The red-scaled alien's expression showed no surprise at seeing James. "Captain Walker," Drem said, his translator converting his clicks and hisses into English. "By order of the Coalition Council, your vessel is to power down immediately and prepare for boarding. Your modifications must be inspected for safety compliance." "Admiral Drem," James replied calmly, "we appreciate your concern for our safety, but the Underdog has never been safer. In fact, we've improved virtually every system beyond Coalition standards." Drem's scales darkened with anger. "That is precisely the problem. Human, your reckless modifications violate established protocols. You will comply, or we will be forced to take more direct action." From her position beside James, Rebecca whispered, "They're scared of what we've become." James nodded slightly. "Admiral, humanity joined the coalition in good faith. We were given this ship as a test, and we've passed it beyond anyone's expectations. We've harmed no one. We've violated no laws. We've simply innovated. Innovation without oversight threatens the stability of the coalition," Drem replied. "You have 5 minutes to comply before we take action." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in silence. "Options?" James asked his crew. "We could run," Tom suggested from engineering. "Our new drive could outpace anything they have. Until they catch us eventually," Maria countered. "We're still one ship." Alex spoke up from the science station. "Captain, remember what we were working on last week? The probability drive." James turned to him. "It's not tested yet." "Neither was the spatial compression module when we first used it," Alex said with growing excitement. "The theory is sound. The initial simulations were promising." "Explain it again," James requested. "In simple terms." Alex nodded. "Traditional weapons target where something is. Our probability drive can calculate where something is most likely to be and nudge reality slightly to ensure we're somewhere else. You're talking about manipulating probability itself, Rebecca said, making it extremely unlikely that their weapons will hit us, and extremely likely that ours will hit them, if needed. Alex confirmed. It doesn't break physics. It just bends the rules a bit. James considered this for a long moment. How long to bring it online? 10 minutes, Tom replied from engineering. Maybe less if we bypass the secondary safety protocols. We don't have 10 minutes, Maria pointed out. We have 4 minutes until they open fire. James made his decision. Do it. Bypass everything non-essential. All power to the probability drive and shields. The next 4 minutes were a flurry of activity as the crew raced to bring the untested system online. Energy flowed through pathways that had never existed in coalition technology, creating quantum fields that manipulated the very fabric of probability. Just as the deadline expired, Tom's voice came through the comm system. Probability drive online, Captain. It's not stable, but it's working. On the main screen, they could see the coalition fleet moving into attack formation. The first energy blasts lanced out from the nearest warships. Brace for impact, James called. But the impacts never came. Each energy blast seemed to veer off course at the last moment, missing the underdog by mere meters. The humans watched in awe as shot after shot failed to connect. It's working, Alex whispered. The probability fields are shifting things just enough. James didn't waste the opportunity. Maria, open a channel to all coalition vessels simultaneously. That's not possible with Standard, she began, then smiled. Right. Standard doesn't apply to us anymore. Channel open to all vessels, Captain. On the bridge of the Righteous Purpose, Admiral Drem stared in disbelief as every single shot from his fleet somehow missed the human vessel. It wasn't evasive maneuvers. The ship barely moved, yet nothing could touch it. Impossible, he muttered. Then, to his further shock, Captain Walker's face appeared on his screen, and from the reactions of his officers, on every screen throughout the fleet. This is Captain James Walker of the Earth ship the Underdog, the human began. We could continue this demonstration, but that would miss the point. You gave us your weakest ship as a test, expecting us to fail. Instead, we've shown you possibilities your civilization has overlooked for millennia. Drem tried to cut the transmission, but nothing happened. Somehow, the humans had overridden all communications controls. Humanity doesn't want conflict, Walker continued. We want partnership, but it must be as equals. We shared all our innovations with Earth. What you're witnessing isn't just one ship. It's humanity's gift to the stars. You can fight us and lose, or join us and grow. The choice is yours. The standoff lasted 12 tense hours. During that time, the Coalition Council held emergency sessions, reviewing reports from the fleet and data from Telia's observation mission. The evidence was undeniable. Humans had advanced specific technologies beyond what the Coalition had achieved in thousands of years of development. Finally, High Chancellor Vorex himself contacted the Underdog. Captain Walker, the ancient alien said, his skin shifting through patterns that indicated deep thought. The Coalition has existed for 50,000 years. In that time, we have encountered many species, but none quite like humans. James waited, saying nothing. Your methods are unorthodox. Your thinking is unpredictable. These qualities frightened us. But perhaps Vorex's skin rippled with colors that translated as thoughtful consideration. Perhaps fear of the unknown is our limitation, not yours. What are you suggesting, Chancellor? James asked. A new kind of partnership. Not humans submitting to coalition standards, but a true exchange of ideas. Your innovations combined with our stability. Your creativity with our experience. James smiled. That's all we ever wanted. In the months that followed, the Underdog became a symbol of a new era in galactic politics. Human innovation spread throughout coalition space, not as a conquering force, but as a revitalizing one. Species that had accepted technological stagnation as inevitable began to question their own limitations. Telia, now serving as the first coalition minister of interspecies innovation, summarized it best in her address to the new council. By giving humans our weakest ship, we accidentally gave them the perfect opportunity to show us our own blind spots. They didn't just rewrite the capabilities of a single vessel, they've rewritten what we thought was possible. And in doing so, they've written themselves into the future of the coalition in ways none of us could have predicted. Captain Walker and his crew became diplomats as much as explorers, building bridges between human ingenuity and alien wisdom. The underdog, now barely recognizable from its original form, became a living symbol of what was possible when creativity was unleashed. The universe, it turned out, had far fewer fixed rules than anyone had imagined. All it took was a species willing to test them.